Okay, we're recording. So this is lessons 5 and 6 for my Essential Math grade 12s. And I know that we watched a video and I told you that I think this is something that even if I had lots of spare money, I don't think I would ever do again in my life, and that's buy a brand new vehicle. As the little video told you, it's not a great economic decision, but it's the kind of decision people make for their own kind of personal reasons, right? They just wanted to have a brand new car, so they do. I mean, hey, I wanted to have a copy of X-Men #1, and if I had the money, I'd go out and buy it. But it doesn't really, it's not a good investment. It's probably a better investment than buying a new car. But it's something people want more than they need. Having said that, I know that my in-laws, you know, they're business people. I think I've told you this story, right? My mother-in-law especially, she is she manages people's money. She is a broker and an investment broker. And when you do that for a living, you have to kind of, you know, if you're going to get people to invest their money with you, you have to have certain appearances, right? You have to create the impression that you are successful. And driving up in a nice brand new car when you go to do house visits to try to sell people your products, your financial products, having a brand new vehicle is one of those kind of outward indicators that people will notice that, oh, they must be doing really good. Look at this brand new car they're driving up in. So those are the kind of people who might have business reasons to buy a brand new vehicle. So even though this is something that I advise highly against, it is something that the curriculum says we have to talk about. What are the things you have to consider when buying a brand new vehicle? Well, first of all, we have some definitions to get out of the way. We call the cost of the vehicle with its standard equipment, we call that the base price. It costs money to get vehicles to the dealerships that sell them, right? Cars are heavy. So we call that cost, the cost of transporting a vehicle from the manufacturer to the dealership, the freight. It's like the shipping price for cars. Can't they just drive them to the dealership? No, they don't do that. You've probably seen on the highway those great big trucks that have new cars on them. Where were they before they were on that? They were on trains. Suppose you're buying a vehicle from Korea or Japan or Germany. Where were they before that? They were on ships, in shipping containers and shipping crates. It costs a significant amount of money to move a car to the dealership from where it was manufactured. We call that the freight cost. Then, of course, the base price is the standard equipment price. What if you want to make sure that you have an automatic transmission, that you have, so some things don't come standard that you might want. We call those things options. Maybe you want to make sure that you're buying a truck that has a hitch on it, so getting a hitch installed, that's an option. I know on older vehicles, air conditioning wasn't standard. You had to buy that as an option. Maybe things like power seats. And nowadays, power windows are pretty much standard, but that was an option not too long ago. An option I almost wish I didn't have. That's always the first thing to go on a vehicle is the stupid power window. Yeah. Have you guys ever had a vehicle that you had to crank down the windows with a little crank? You still do? Good for you. That won't go. If that breaks, you could fix it yourself. Power windows are the bane of my existence. It's the first thing to go. Actually, it's not the first thing to go. You know what the first thing to go in a new vehicle is? The first thing that will stop working is whatever the little notch is on the hinge of the door, so that when you open the door, it'll stay open and not swing all the way open or close itself. There's like little notches that you can kind of feel. Those wear out right away. Within a year, those don't. Those have worn off. Anyway, options are things that are not part of the standard equipment that you might want to pay for because that's what you want in your vehicle, like four-wheel drive, like an automatic transmission, like, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. You probably would know better than me if you're shopping for vehicles. Like floor runners, things like that, like those little steps that you have on the side of taller vehicles that you can step on to get into the vehicle. Those don't come standard. You have to pay extra for those. All right. So once you have put together the base price, the options, the freight, oh yeah, air conditioning tax, you get something that is also called the MSRP, the manufacturer suggested retail price. The nickname for that, the more common name is, we call that the sticker price. Of course, if you have a vehicle already and you're looking to upgrade to a new vehicle, you of course want to find out what your trade in, and you put a hyphen between those two words, allowance is. Your trade-in allowance is the amount that the dealership will give you for your old vehicle. All right, that's all the writing you have to do on this page. We give you some steps. I'm actually going to make the next test open book. So if you just want to use your notes, you don't have to make yourself a single page sheet. Okay, because there's a lot of places where there's stuff like this. Follow these steps. Number one, find a sticker price, which means you have to add up your base price, your options, your freight, your air conditioning tax. If there's any documentation fees, if you've never owned a new vehicle before, then you have to put in things like documentation fees. Subtract how much your trade-in allowance is, and then add PST and GST to your answer from step 3. It is important that you actually know these steps. Ms. Cox was telling me that she was trying to buy, the last time she was trying to buy a new vehicle, they decided to try to put the tax on it and then do number 3 and subtract how much her trade-in was worth, which would have cost her money. She actually, if anything, kind of caught them doing something underhanded. They said, oh, sorry, that's a mistake. You're right. We have to do the trade-in and then calculate the tax. They can't make you pay tax on money that you didn't actually spend. So what they were probably doing was probably hoping she didn't notice and then actually keeping the difference between how much it would be in the PST and GST on the higher value, which would be, you know, the price before her trade-in. So she probably caught them doing something underhanded. They just claimed, oh, sorry about that, we just made a mistake. I'd be skeptical that that was an error, right? You're a car dealership. How many of these transactions do you do every day, and this one you make that mistake? I don't think so. I'm a little skeptical that that was a mistake. Now, one thing that people usually notice when they're looking at this is that, okay, if we have to take off the trade-in that my vehicle's worth and then calculate the taxes, wait a minute. There's an air conditioning tax already, and then we have to calculate PST and GST. Don't you take this price off before you calculate the taxes? And the answer to that is no. You're actually paying PST and GST on a tax. You're paying tax on a tax. And somebody explained that to me. I actually asked a friend of a friend who runs a car dealership. I said, how do they get away with charging PST and GST after they've added the air conditioning tax to the price? How did they get away with charging a tax on a tax? And they said, well, hey, it's right in the name. S. What does the S stand for? Services. That's right. Well, in this case, it's sales, but certainly this one is the goods and services tax, and you are paying a tax on the service of being taxed for air conditioning. It's like, oh, okay, interesting, but that is not illegal. Putting these taxes on before they take the trade-in allowance, that would be wrong. They would be violating. They would be fined if they were caught doing that over and over again. So we're going to now do some calculations where we find the total price of buying a new vehicle. So here we go. Here's an example 1. We got somebody named Des who is buying herself a 2-door Camaro Sport Coupe. Good for Des. That sounds like a fun car. The base price is $20,798. Oh, it's a he. Sorry, Des is a he. He adds an option package that costs $1,585. Plus, he wants an automatic transmission, which doesn't come standard on sports cars, for an additional $695. Freight on the car is $655. That's actually low. Freight's a little more than that these days. The dealership will give him a trade-in allowance of $5,000 on his old car, and there's a documentation fee of $150. Des lives in Manitoba, which of course tells us which PST and which GST to use. So first, let's calculate his sticker price. So this is just adding. The sticker price is the base price plus the option package he wants, plus the freight cost. Oh, sorry, plus the, what is this? Where does this number come from? Oh, sorry, plus the automatic transmission. Sorry, so this is really, so this is my, here, let's call this base price. These together are my options. One of them's an option package. Maybe it includes fancy rims, I don't know. Plus my freight. So there we go. So there's the numbers we're adding together. And I've already done this calculation. It's $23,733. Okay, determine how much Des will pay in total for this vehicle. All right, so does it say how much are the taxes? No, so I don't need to know those numbers separately. So I'm going to use that trick that we used earlier this unit. I want all of this number, which is 100% of it, plus I want 12% of this number. So logically, I want 112% of that number. Oh, but wait a minute. Before I do that, I have to take off how much the trade-in is. Oh, and I also have to add that documentation fee. So I have to take the sticker price, right? Add, so this is sticker price. Add the documentation fee. And then take away the fact that they're going to give Des $5,000 trade-in value for his old vehicle. What do I do with that number? I want 112% of it. So I'm going to times it by 1.12, right? So that is, again, that is 112% of the total price. So there we go. I would do that with my calculator, and I'd actually use my brackets. I'd go 1.12 times, I'd hit open a bracket. If you've never used, if there's anybody here who's never used brackets in their calculator before, try this calculation right now. Brackets in your calculator work the exact same way that you read them from left to right. So take 1.12 times, open your brackets, do this add, this subtract, close your bracket. Don't forget to hit equals. Some calculators, when you close the bracket, the screen changes because it just figured out what was in the bracket. And then people go, oh, there's my answer. Well, wait a minute, no, it's not the answer until you hit equals. It doesn't do this multiply till you hit equals. But here's the final number. Des is paying, including taxes, $21,148.96. Now, what if Des doesn't have that in cash? Well, obviously then Des is going to be financing this, right? Des is going to be getting a car loan and making payments. We'll do that stuff in one of the next lessons. For this lesson, we're just worrying about calculating the basic calculation of the car. So they all work just like this. So there's only one example. So like I said, that was pretty short. So why don't we talk now about the reason why I recommend don't buy brand new vehicles. You want to actually be as smart as you can with your money. Do your research and try to find a vehicle that is in good shape, that has low kilometers on it, but stick to vehicles that are at least 5 years old. Why 5 years old? Because 5 years old saves you from the loss of as much depreciation as possible. Vehicles are the biggest investment you're ever going to make in your life that completely and totally depreciate, unless you buy a house and there is some sort of housing market crash that we can't see coming. That, of course, has happened. That happened in the early 2000s, the big market crash of, I want to say it was 2008. where people walked away from their mortgages in the United States because their properties and their houses were not worth nearly what they were mortgaged for. That was that more than anything is what caused the big financial crash in 2008. But barring something like that happening in your life, you're going to buy a vehicle, and the second you start driving it, it is not worth what it was when you bought it. It depreciated. Depreciation is what we call a decrease in the value of something as it gets older. All vehicles lose their value as they become older. Okay, there are minor exceptions. Obviously, when they built that Batmobile in the 1960s that I was showing you, it was not worth $4 million, but it is now. There are special cases of collectors' vehicles and stuff like that, but that's minor. That's niche. Of the millions and millions and millions of vehicles that are bought and sold in this world, nearly all of them are losing money. So, this is called depreciation. A new car is often going to depreciate between 15 and 25% in its first year. Yikes. And then usually 15% every year after that. Now this varies. Some vehicles hold their values more than others. I believe the number one vehicle, somebody could Google this, but I think the number one vehicle brand in terms of holding its value from new to the first 5 years, I believe is BMW. I don't know why. Well-made, expensive cars, I guess. All right, let's do some calculations. A new car is sold for $35,000. Calculate the car's resale value at the end of its first 2 years. The depreciation rate is 20% for the first year and 15% after that. Can I tell you how not to do this first? Don't say, oh, well, it loses 20%, then it loses 15%. Why don't we just take off 35%? No, it doesn't work that way. Because you lose 20% of the original price, then that becomes your new value of your car. Then you lose 15% of that new value. So you have to do it in 2 steps when it's 2 different numbers. So first we have to think about this logically. If it loses 20% of its value, it keeps what percent of its value? Somebody already said it. Yeah, you're right. Does that make logical sense? The whole value of the vehicle is 100% of it. So if it loses 20% of its value, it keeps 80% of its value. So what I want to do is, in year 1, I realize that I'm going to keep 80% of the $35,000 that this vehicle is worth. And again, how do you multiply when you, or how do you multiply? I just gave away. How do you do the calculation when you see the word of? It's a multiply. How do you work with percents? You don't. You change them to decimals. So after year 1, your vehicle that was worth $35,000 is now worth 80% of that, which is $28,000. So after 1 year, that's its new value. But we want to know, calculate the car's resale value at the end of the first 2 years. So actually, I can say that's my first answer. So this is the resale value after 1 year. But now we got to worry about year 2. What's the difference for year 2? It doesn't lose 20% in year 2. It only loses 15. So again, in year 2, if it's going to lose 15% of its value, how much does it keep? Think about that. If it loses 15%, what does it keep? 15% from 100%. So what's it keeping? 85%. So in year 2, we're going to keep 85% of, is it 35,000? No, it's 28,000. Right? The value of the car after year 1 is the value you start calculating on for year 2. So that's going to be mathematically 0.85 times 28,000, which is 23,800. And so that is my new remaining, you could call that the resale value again, or I could say that that's my remaining value after 2 years. So again, take kind of a back up from this question and think about the big picture of it for a second. Is it worth it to buy a new car? It was worth $35,000 when you drove it off the lot. 2 years later, it's only worth $23,800. Just for the privilege of having driven a new car, like I'm on a game show or something. It cost you $35,000 minus $23,800. You don't have to write this down, but think. It cost you $11,200 in depreciation just to drive a new car for 2 years. Is it worth that? Do you get $11,200 worth of joy and fun for saying to impress people that you have a new vehicle? Now again, my mother-in-law would say, darn straight, I'm making more than that in sales driving up in a fancy new vehicle and impressing people when my customers see me in my new Cadillac. It's like, okay. Certainly I wouldn't get that value driving up. Will my students perform better if they see that I drove up in a brand new Cadillac and parked in it? Yeah, there's people nodding yes. There's people going, yes, I will so do that teacher's homework and study harder because they drive a good car. I don't think so. I don't think that's going to help me in my job. Okay, so example 2 actually is this calculation. So let's formally do it here. You don't have to do it here. So here it is. Calculate the total depreciation. So the total depreciation is the car cost me $35,000, and right. So let's write that even right. Original cost minus 23,800, which is of course car's value after 2 years. And that would be, what did I just say that number was? I just did it. There it is, $11,200. So again, that is how much depreciation has cost this buyer. Depreciation after 2 years. Okay. Now, what if you do have a situation where you have the depreciation is basically the same for a couple of years? Can happen. Sometimes it depends on the market. Like again, I think I told you this the other day, right? Right now, thanks to pandemic land, trucks, now trucks are always popular, but pickup trucks, big SUVs, like big ones, are having a spike in sales. Now, why is that? People who follow the markets are saying that what they're seeing is more people working from home or more people trying to start home businesses where they want to truck to haul things around for their business, and people who would normally take vacations where they fly somewhere are deciding to go camping, deciding to pull trailers. And so right now, a vehicle that can pull things, a vehicle with lots of pulling power, that's very popular. So because that type of vehicle is more popular, if you have one that you want to get rid of that's only a couple years old, it's probably maintaining more of its resale value because it's popular, right? Supply and demand is what sets prices in our market. The demand's high, supply is low, so that's going to drive up the prices. So let's say, for example, we happen to have a truck that's just going to lose 10% a year. Not 20% the first year, 15 the second year, or 15 the first year, 10 the second year. Because the market's in such high demand, it's only losing the same amount in the first 2 years, 10% per year. Okay, I'm going to do this calculation 2 different ways. Because it's the same number each year, I could do it in 2 steps. After 1 year, just like I did in the last question, I can say that that's, of course, 0.9. Why 0.9? Where am I getting 0.9 from? I don't see no 0.9 in this question. Because I'll do it over here, right? Losing 10% is the same thing as keeping 90%, right? And 90% is 0.9. So after 1 year, it's 0.9 times that, which equals $9,450. And then, of course, after 2 years, after the second year, we now want 90% of $9,450, which is $8,505. And then we'll just jump down to here and do this calculation while it's fresh. So my total depreciation is, my truck started at being worth $10,500, but now it's only worth $8,505. So after 2 years, my truck depreciated by almost $2,000, $1,995. Okay, told you that there is another way we could have done this one. Notice that I'm taking this number, 10,500, I'm timesing it by 0.9, and then that answer is getting times by 0.9 again. Because we're depreciating by the same amount every year, you know you can shortcut this. I'll even write shortcut, which you can only use when depreciation doesn't change, is you could say that, all right, it's $10,500 and I'm timesing it by 90% twice. There we go, a little math trick from junior high days of old, right? If you repeatedly multiply by the same number over and over again, that's what exponents are. So if you take $10,500 and you times it by 0.9 squared, you get that final number of 8,505. What if it lost 10% for another year after that? I could have changed this number to a 3. But that only works because it's the same number you're multiplying by over and over again. So that's a trick you can only use in that case. You couldn't have done this in example 2. Why not? Well, because look, back in example 2, or example 1, I should say, it was 20% the first year, then it was 15% the second year. So I can't just repeat the same multiply. But if we give you a question where you do repeat the same multiply and you feel you want to shortcut it, instead of doing 2 multiplies, you could use an exponent. So if you're comfortable with that, great. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want to. So again, that's our shortcut way to do it. All right, and that's it for lessons 5 and 6. Told you they were kind of short and sweet. So I'll stop my little video here. There we go. Shrink that down, maybe. There we go. And